This one hurts me, man.
You may proceed.
The voice acting is 10 out of 10, but the story makes no sense. Don't save and load the game. It brings the enemies back to life. And breaks the music. What the hell is going on? I had never played Poppy Playtime, except for Chapter 1 briefly on the Grandma Savers channel.
Oh my god, dude, I can't watch this shit, dude.
So, when I ran out of games to play on my channel, I decided I would take a step back and see what all the hype was about. And I was blown away. I didn't feel at ease the entire time. Chapter 1, great introduction. Chapter 2, phenomenal gameplay. Chapter 3 was one of the most scary experiences I have had in a long time in a mascot horror game. Or a horror game in general. So, it was with great excitement that I started Chapter 4. And everything fell apart. How did you f*** it up so badly? I put my pants on. Nipple at a time, one nipple at a time. The second you start the game, you notice the problems. They changed the swinging mechanic. For the past 3 chapters, we've had some mechanics ingrained into our soul. Basic mechanics and features that shouldn't be changed. For example, the flare gun sticking to walls and sticking to objects. For example, trying to vault over gaps by using a handle, letting you pull yourself up slightly so you can get across. For no reason at all, Chapter 4 opens up and puts you in an area where it requires you to use the grapple mechanic without telling you that it has been changed. Now, instead of it being an interesting gameplay diegetic exploration factor where you hook onto something and pull yourself up to see where you need to go, if you grab onto something, you just walk off a ledge and your camera is forced into a swing. A swing you have no control over. It can feel jarring swapping into it. It can feel jarring coming out of it. It does not mesh well with the gameplay. And that is the most minor of complaints. According to the game, shooting your flare gun haphazardly can be fatal. It says, and I damn near quote here, that if you shoot cardboard, it will burn. If you shoot ropes, it will burn. If you shoot red barrels, which are displayed on the monitor, they are going to explode. Guess what never happens in the entire game? This is egregious. Now, they use this mechanic twice. Once, to burn the rope on the door directly next to the videotape, which never comes up again. And then once, 4 hours later, where you shoot the cryogenic containers that explode. Never again! It's not even a feature at that point. For the record, I did shoot just about every barrel in the game to make sure that this was just a feature that they forgot to add, and it was a feature they forgot to add. So we've got these key gameplay elements that are either being established as new and just flat out don't work, or old elements that worked perfectly well that now no longer work as well. Add in a new got a slide past tight objects mechanic which doesn't work and breaks constantly. The hide mechanic is unbelievably buggy and just doesn't work sometimes. That in and of itself is not enough for me to come out of my semi-retirement bashing on games, is it? No. No, it is not. You see, what we have here is a complete and utter breakdown in both the gameplay mechanics from previous games and the story beats they were planning on hitting. Previous games established a very clear pattern. You have your introduction to the enemy in a setting that isn't quite so hostile. That grand enemy then becomes the antagonist for a good chunk of the game. Throughout this chunk of the game, you have to use your wits and smarts in order to outsmart them and get around the obstacles they place in your path. Whether that be sprinting through tight corridors, or sneaking through schools, or beating their minigames. Each one of them had a unique and interesting experience tied to their character. This all culminates in a final experience where you finally confront the enemy. Whether that be pulling a box to deal with Huggy Wuggy, fleeing from Mommy's wrath only to crush her in a grinder, or hide in a panic room and deal with Catnap. All of these had their setup, their experience, and their payoff, and they felt great. And it felt like they were building up each chapter a better way to perform this formula. This chapter has 3 major enemies. One of them is a boss fight where you run in circles. One of them is a boss fight where you run in circles, and one of them is a boss fight where you run in circles. One of them has no character at all. One of them is characterized as being incredibly intelligent but is incredibly stupid. And one of them has one of the best characters we have seen in Poppy Playtime so far that is so badly mishandled, I couldn't care less. I am, of course, talking about, in order, Yarnaby, the Doctor, and Doey. Inherently, the story they're trying to tell this chapter, at least the major beats of it, is not bad. You have a phenomenal setup here for an incredible chapter, so much so that I'm angry that they didn't do it. I mean, hell, a psychopathic doctor who uploads himself into a computer matrix to be alive forever, only to be enslaved by the company he used to do that, and in order to break free from his enslavement, helps a crazy robot creature to break out all the other crazy robot creatures to destroy the world. That is awesome. A loyal pet to that doctor, that mad doctor, who he conditioned into being loyal and consistent only to him. That is phenomenal as an idea. A troubled child, an amalgamation of 3 different personalities who fight and argue, who cannot get along properly without there being a consistent balance, who is unhinged but wants to do his best to help everyone who has been affected by this. It's a phenomenal idea, but your execution was pathetic. It's made even worse when you have a 4-hour chapter and almost an entire hour is dedicated to you standing still in front of a monitor or sitting still looking at a piece of paper in order to be drip fed the story. There is no diegetic story discovery here anymore. Instead, anything you might have missed is forced down your throat by watching videos. And if you miss a video, you just don't get that part of the story, which might be one of the most stupid story delivery advices I have ever heard of. So I'm going to stop this stream of consciousness now with one last point. The level design in Chapter 4 is utterly horrendous. Wide open rooms that you emerge into with zero clue as to why you're getting there. No direction for your character to move. You just go the path that's laid out for you with no idea why or how you're doing it. And no clear understanding when you see a new place of what's meant to be done there and what's coming. I don't know what the hell went wrong with Poppy Playtime Chapter 4, but join me as we take a deep dive exploration through the entire chapter in a more structured sense and less of a stream of consciousness. I'm IcyCaress. Welcome to my channel, and welcome to why Poppy Playtime Chapter 4 has utterly failed. As previously stated, the story of Poppy Playtime Chapter 4 has really interesting beats to hit. The overarching story of this insane doctor who assisted the prototype in breaking everyone free. The tortured soul of a boy trapped in a body with 2 other children, confused and lost, who just wants to do his best to help everyone, despite his violent tendencies. And a safe haven for the toys who didn't bend the knee to the prototype. A place that is under siege and needs our help. These 3 story beats are genuinely really good. Unfortunately, the execution, as I said previously as well, was terrible. First of all, the Doctor, who repeatedly traps you in a situation where you will be killed no matter what, and then lets you go. This sets up an almost ambivalence towards the Doctor, especially when his final encounter, the boss fight with him, is such a disappointment. The player agency is completely removed from the character. Instead, the only reason we're allowed to progress is because the Doctor lets us, instead of previously, where we were able to progress because of our intelligence, because we looked for alternate ways out, new paths, new scenarios, new situations, which infuriated our enemies and made them make mistakes. In chapter 4, 3 times the Doctor traps us in a no-win situation, and 3 times the Doctor calls off his pets and just lets us walk away. Why? There is no reason why. There is no reason why this man would put us in a wholly fatal situation just to pull back right before the job is finished. Now, you could argue that it's because he's functionally insane and he wants to investigate us and observe us, but that was never his priority in life. He had seen and investigated billions of humans in his daily life. His focus is purely on the prototype and the furthering of his own plans. It makes no sense for him to be interested in our player character, especially when there's no payoff to that, where of him realizing who we are or what we're doing there. He just dies.
I have seen enough. Thank you. You may proceed.
If this was chapter 1, 2, or 3, when we're in this situation where we're surrounded by toys and we're being attacked relentlessly, the solution would have been to block off the doors with a block, to depower the doors to remove the Doctor's control, or to escape by going up. Instead, the only reason we get to continue, the only reason we get to live, is because the Doctor said so. Hooray for player agency, I guess. Having Yarnaby as part of the Doctor storyline is a pretty damn good idea. Yarnaby is a loyal puppy. A puppet. Puppet, I guess. Unfortunately, in the game, the way that his story is presented is only through one small video, where we are told that he is incredibly loyal, and then you hear the Doctor say, well, I'll take him as a pet. What? In a game that lives and dies on the memorability of your mascots, having Yarnaby's story, the major boss for the first third of this chapter, be told to us in a 30-second mini skippable cutscene, is terrible.
Yarnaby.
I would have vastly preferred more sprinklings around the map. Maybe experiencing him the same way that we experienced Cato, as a spy. Throughout our engagements with Yarnaby, more would be revealed about how he's only loyal to the Doctor because of the way he was abused, because of the stuff that he was put through, instead of just seeming like a blind, dumb automaton robot toy. He would become a character unto himself. And in the final confrontation with Yarnaby, instead of running in circles, hitting these floor levers that redivert power, which make 0 sense, by the way, and then running along a walkway, jumping off an edge, and watching him hang himself and catch fire in midair, and then fall to his death. Like, what? We didn't do anything. There was nothing there. There was no reason for him to do. Oh my god, it's so frustrating. Every time Poppy and Ollie and Doey bring up how we dealt with Huggy Wuggy, with Mommy and with the Cato, they do it with a sense of almost awe in their voices. And that is deserved, because we dealt with those creatures on our own terms. We faced them down, and through ingenuity, we eliminated them. It doesn't happen in this chapter, except arguably with Doey, but it's so fluffing stupid. We didn't kill Yarnaby. He killed himself. How about instead we give Yarnaby a little bit more agency? The final confrontation, instead of it just being Yarnaby walking in circles around an area listening for you using your hands, then walking over to the hand thing and playing an animation, why don't we have a mini arena where Yarnaby, this fast, lethal, murderous creature, is sicked onto us in a way that the Doctor wants us to die. Not to be called off, not to be let go. The Doctor has all the information he needs. Now Yarnaby is going to kill you. Instead of Yarnaby being this dumb creature who just, as I said, walks in circle and does nothing, have him come for you like a ton of bricks. Have him chase you along a platform. Have you pulling objects down behind you in order to get him away. Use the burning mechanic to your advantage, to burn ropes, to drop stuff, to slow him down. And then at the end of it, instead of him hanging himself completely randomly, have your character use one of the grapples to pull himself over the ledge, pulling down a shutter behind him that you hear Yarnaby slam into, and then you watch him on a monitor slowly fall to his death. Mournful wails or his little sounds screeching out for the doctor's help. A doctor who just lets him go, who chastises him for his failure, who calls him useless and pathetic, who then talks callously about how much he didn't care and how he was going to get you anyway. How Yarnaby was a failed experiment. And then Yarnaby's chapter is wrapped up in a much better way. Instead of being a completely idiotic, forgettable character who has no real story, and the only experience you have of him is him walking in circles in an area a la A Quiet Place style, which was another game I hated. No, instead of that garbage, we have a full story about Yarnaby, a child who is transformed into a hound, who does as he's told. Maybe he's conditioned to a certain phrase, "Would you kindly," comes to mind from BioShock, where when he hears that, he has no choice to obey because of the conditioning he went under through the doctor's graces. And then instead of us escaping because Yarnaby is an incompetent idiot who walks very slowly and walks in circles and does nothing to frighten you or attack you, we escape because we were intelligent. We escape because we use the environment to our advantage. We pull objects down to block his way. We run for our life. We're sprinting over mechanics. We're using the purple hand glove to gain height in the environment when Yarnaby is scrabbling underneath us. That would be so much better than running along one little walkway, jumping off an edge with the stupid new grapple mechanic, and then watching him hang himself on a chain. What? Just... what? It would tie in nicely to the next enemy we face. The Doctor, callous, abandoning the toy, is clearly the antagonist in this situation. We've spoken to the toys in the safe haven, who, by the way, Poppy tells you to go talk to them, and they have nothing to say, because they forgot to add that into the game.
Take a minute to catch your breath. I'm sure the others would love to talk with you.
I don't think this is a situation of... they needed more time in the oven to make this a good game. Nobody else wants to talk to me in this place. She lied. I think the entire design for this chapter was flawed from the ground up, and no amount of time could have fixed it. But we know the Doctor has to go. Not only so that we can flood the area with gas and blow it up to take out the prototype, which is Poppy's plan, but also because while the Doctor is there, our toys have nowhere to go. It's revealed to us in a letter that Poppy had sought somewhere safe for the toys to stay, and the only place that was safe was this safe haven. Why? It wasn't because of the prototype. It was because of the Doctor. The Doctor had control of the facility. He had set up traps to kill them. He had set up quarantines and enemies around every corner to try to kill the ones that resisted. So, instead of us going and killing the Doctor because the storyline just kind of leads us there, because again, we're planning on blowing up the prototype, which is going to kill everyone in this area, alright. Instead, we're going to go kill the Doctor because the prototype is going to be lured to Safe Haven, and we're going to blow it up there while Poppy evacuates the rest of the toys.
It was you!
Why didn't she? If all the bomb was meant to explode the entire fucking factory. If the bomb was only going to explode this small section, why didn't they evacuate this small section when I killed the fucking Doctor? Because with the Doctor out of the way, other areas in the facility will become safe, available for them to hide in and survive while we deal with the prototype. Instead of a final boss fight with the Doctor, where we walk into his room and a creature we've never seen before drops us into a pit filled with those creatures where only one is active at a time, but it doesn't matter because you can literally just walk past them to your destinations. Walking in circles through a maze to find power cores to open up the power in the most unengaging boss fight I have ever experienced. Instead, you're ducking and dodging around the Doctor's traps. He keeps trying to pin you in one place. We see one Doctor trap, Nitrogen, against Doey, which is to set up his boss fight later, which is alright, cool. But we don't see any evidence of any others. We don't see any Tesla towers. We don't see any gates. We don't see him closing doors. Why aren't we fighting the environment? The Doctor has uploaded himself into the facility in such a way that he now has control of everything. Of the doors, of the power, of the gas valves, of the pipes. We should be crawling through vents, vaulting over broken doors, blowing stuff up in order to get to this Doctor and wrest control of the facility back from him. It shouldn't feel like a casual walk through empty hallways where we just stumble into his room, are dropped into a maze full of creatures we've never seen before and are completely boring, only to walk back up and unplug something which conveniently blows him up. No, after exploring the environment, after finding ways around the Doctor's traps through vents, through vaulting, using our gloves creatively to flood areas, we finally stumble into the Doctor's room. We force open his door. And instead of weird creatures that we've never seen before with TV heads that for some reason the Doctor can only control one of at a time, the Doctor is revealed unto his entire glory. The brain in the big tower. Giant, spidery silver arms dropping from the ceiling. Things that were used once upon a time to perform surgery turned into tools of torture under the Doctor's control. And instead of us having to go in and pull out a random thing that blows him up, instead, we have to unplug wires from the roof using our hands and plug them into other sockets, swapping high voltage and low voltage to fry him, to remove his control of his contraptions and drain him of his ability to control the facility. And then at the very end, right before we plug in the final one, the Doctor gets his moment of enlightenment, his humiliation. Something he hasn't felt since wresting control of the station away from the humans. He begs for his life. And, in a moment of uncharacteristic callousness, we plug in the final socket anyway. Because of what he'd done to Yarnaby, Poppy, Doey, we had witnessed the pain that this man had brought, and we bring him to his knees, we end his life, and we get the Omni Glove. The Omni Glove, by the way, is fucking stupid. Quick side tangent from the storyline here, where I want the story to go. The fact that the Omni Glove has 5 charges arbitrarily on a glove that's meant to control the entire facility, and yet the Doctor was able to use it to control everything infinitely, just makes zero story sense. Why is that a thing? Regardless, it's Doey's turn. I like the idea of Doey's betrayal. The third and main enemy of the game being an ally turned hostile is such an interesting mechanic that is played out in a few games, but not in a way that's very satisfying. And unfortunately, this is one of the least satisfying versions. For those of you who don't know, Doey is 3 children merged into one. One of them is angry, one of them is sad, one of them is mischievous. When the prototype hijacks our explosives and uses them to blow up Safe Haven, there should be a crisis of conscience in Doey's mind.
Who ruined everything? No, that's not true. They jump-started the generator. They destroyed everything! I'll kill you!
It is warned in one of the tapes that if there's ever a dysfunction, a imbalance in power between the personalities, Doey could become a violent monster. But that's not really demonstrated in his fight at all. Instead of having 3 personalities arguing with each other, Doey, this gigantic creature who can move at the speed of sound, who is able to destroy steel and objects with ease, who is incredibly powerful, instead of having him be a terrifying, scary foe, his boss fight is us running in circles from a creature who is slower than us, waiting for little nitrogen canisters to get stuck in him, shooting the nitrogen canisters, and then pulling a thing down on him. And then he has 2 MMO boss attacks. What a fucking mess. So I wouldn't change the overarching story for Doey. I think it's a phenomenal way to demonstrate why the scientists were scared of these creations. This child who is lost and scared and confused, who wants to do his best by everyone else, but is still a violent monster at heart, who in a misunderstanding, in a moment of madness, ends up fighting with himself and trying to take us out. And during the boss fight, the creature is fast, it's lethal, it comes for you like a seraphim from heaven, blaring its fury. Right before it grabs you, one of the other personalities fights back, grabbing itself, pulling itself away, screaming at you to run because it can't control itself anymore. Have the personalities argue in the fight. Have every engagement with it end with one of the personalities being weakened or destroyed until all that's left is pure, mindless fury. The rage of a child who was abused and murdered, who wants revenge, who doesn't think. And then have that creature come for you without thinking. Have it step into the room with the nitrogen and the drill and have it eliminated.
Kill everyone who hurts me! Rip you! Can't trust anyone! The gentle voices lie! You lie! I'm trying to be better, to be who they needed. Smart enough, not good enough, not... I'm sorry.
Doey was the best part of this chapter, and honestly, my rewrites, the script ideas, the changes to the boss fight are almost minor. Just increasing his lethality, increasing his bipolar, and making him feel a little bit more at odds with himself. And then we would have had a 10 out of 10 experience with Doey. Even as it is, as an 8 out of 10, he stands out from the rest of this chapter. He will be the reason that this chapter is seen favorably. Because he was personable, he was friendly, he was a lovely character, he was engaging, he had intrigue going on behind the scenes, he was a 4-dimensional creature who was let down in the final boss fight, who was let down by a poor mechanic. As far as the other boss, the sheep thing, I don't know, it shows up for 30 seconds, charges at you, and has absolutely no story. If there's anything that is more indicative of how bullshit this game has become after Chapter 3, it's that. It's the fact that they literally take a character we have never seen before, never experienced before, and throw it at you in the least memorable, running in circles again, boss fight I have ever seen. I mean, come on, you didn't even try. I am not the smartest cookie. I will wholeheartedly admit that. There has been many times where I've been lost in games where the path forward is probably pointed out with yellow paint. However, it feels like in Chapter 3 of Poppy Playtime, they took a chance to build a bigger world, an environment that was a little bit more open and a little bit more explorable. And, in my opinion, despite getting stuck a few times and getting a little bit lost and confused, they did okay. The rest of the chapter was held up by the overarching threat of the cattle and the understanding of the story and the darkness that was being revealed in it. Chapter 4 takes the Chapter 3 experiment and runs with it. I don't think there's a single open area in this game, or even some closed areas, where I wasn't looking around trying to figure out what the hell I was meant to be doing. When you walk into a region, it's not immediately obvious, hey, that's the way to go. Let's go explore elsewhere. Instead, you're left looking around like, what? What do I do here? What are these pipes for? What is this area for? I'm meant to be running away from Doey. Where do I go? Level design is one of the trickiest things I think you can ever experience in a video game, especially a story-based one where you're wanting the players to always have a sense of progression. Unfortunately, in Chapter 4, there was almost no sense of progression for me. Not only because of the wide open expansiveness that left you exploring, not only because we were stopping every 10 minutes to wait for 10 minutes watching a video or reading a note, but also because there was so much looping and reuse of assets, I couldn't tell sometimes whether I was going the right way and making progress, or if I had accidentally gotten myself turned around somehow and was going in completely the wrong direction. I don't really have too many notes on this chapter because I have never tried to build a level. It's not something I'm super experienced with. All I can say is, whatever it was you were experimenting with in Chapter 3, the experiment nearly failed there, and it completely failed in Chapter 4. And I desperately hope that Chapter 5, if and when it comes out, if I even think about playing it, considering there's been a 30% price jump between each version so far. So Chapter 5 is going to be $30 all by itself, or what will probably be a 5-hour experience with 2 hours of standing still and watching videos and 3 hours of running in circle in boss fights. I fear that Chapter 5 is also going to fall prey to this. It's not even aggrandizement of scope, it's just needless scope. Chapter 3 was a culmination of phenomenal horror, of brilliant tension, with some dumb puzzles. Chapter 4, they have arbitrarily remade the physics system, arbitrarily changed the vaulting system, arbitrarily made every single puzzle either so easy a baby could do it, or so obtuse and time-wasting, it's as if they're just trying to fluff out the chapter. Without looking back at my footage, only 2 puzzles stand out to me right now. The first one is the most obtuse and ridiculous and dumb getting the code to the doctor's office, which requires you to go and count or get codes off of the severed toy limbs in order to figure out which limb goes where, which if the doctor had set that up, I would kind of understand because he's psychopathic, but based on the notes, this was a system devised by the scientists before the Hour of Joy. Why would this be the system? First of all, why would you even have a system where random people can figure out your passcode based on the missing limbs on dolls which are made of flesh and blood and children's hearts, which means they would rot away and become incredibly smelly and need to be replaced every couple of days? It made no sense. It was a stupid puzzle. It was really, really hard to tell what was a hand and a foot when it was supposed to be the head, shoulders, knees, and toes. And I kind of get what they were going for. It was like the Itsy Bitsy Spider part from the Mommy chapter, but fluff me, it was dumb. Running in circles inside the fog, picking up these oxygen refill things for no reason. And for some reason, the oxygen refills only fill up half your oxygen. So if you want to progress any further into the fog, you have to stand and wait for 30 seconds for the light to go green so you can get more oxygen, so you can actually go get the fucking codes. The only other puzzle I remember from this game was at the start of the game, where you walk into a room, so on a whiteboard it says cell, on another whiteboard it has alphabets and numbers, and you just type in the numbers relating to the letters. Both of these puzzles suck for completely different reasons. The first puzzle that I talked about sucks because it's an obtuse, time-wasting, time-consuming, dumb puzzle that has a ton of uselessness to it that seems to have just been put in to waste your time. The second puzzle is horrible because it's not even a puzzle. Why even have a code lock? Contrasting that to the Chapter 3, Chapter 2, Chapter 1 puzzles, where most of them were related to rerouting electricity through in creative ways using your hands. Using your hands. The hands that are the whole point of the Poppy Playtime franchise. I just remembered another puzzle that was half kind of interesting. There's another puzzle where you go into a room and the doctor starts flooding it with freezing gas, so that your hand gets stuck to a code so that you die, and you use an electric saw to cut another hand free and use that to depower the stuff. That was good, except the hand that you cut to use to free the stuff is just floating there. Like, the string's not connected to anything. There's no reason for it to be there. Other than that, that was a great puzzle. More of that, please. There are so many more things wrong with this chapter that I could get into that alone seem like nitpicks, but when put together show an overall pattern of callousness and lack of care. Small things like puzzles not working right the first time, scripted sequences bugging out, mechanics like the vaulting and the hiding in corridors, the sliding mechanics and snapping into that and out of that feeling wrong. Some mechanics just straight up not working at all. Mechanics being missing, like the flare gun. There's so much wrong with it that are just small minor issues that speak of just lack of care and forethought that really bring down the overall feeling of the chapter, not even including the overarching problems which I've spoken about in this video. It feels like they didn't care, and that sucks. Credit where it's due. As I said, the 2 best parts of this chapter were Doey and something I haven't mentioned yet, the ending. The reveal of Ollie. The reveal of Huggy. and the creepy vibe of the creator talking about how you're not meant to be down there and how you will be caught in that one video, those were peak Poppy Playtime moments. Just the rest of it was not. It just wasn't. I really hope they take what they learned from this chapter and scale back chapter 5. Make it a more focused, interesting horror experience, similar to chapter 3 or chapter 2. Because if they make something similar to chapter 4, they've not just spat on their franchise. They've teabagged it, pulled down its trousers, and buried it alive in a pile of manure. In conclusion, chapter 4 was a mess. If chapter 1 was the springboard to launch the franchise, and chapter 2 was an exploration of mechanics, chapter 3 was a culmination of those two, bringing them together in a way with an additional horror side, making you feel tense and stressed and horrified through the entire experience. They took all that they learned and they made generic ass. I have been informed and heard rumors that there were some NFT troubles and that the director and 2 of the other major creators of the franchise have quit. I don't know if that's because of what they saw that this chapter was going to be like, or if it's related to anything else. There's also been apparently some stuff about how they're not good people. I don't know. I don't care about any of that. The only reason why I'm making this video, the only reason why I critique games, because if a game is bad for no reason, I don't care. But if a game had promise, I will tear into it with no regrets, because what I want to happen is for it to become what it had the potential to do. You can see the insane amount of creativity that this development team had. You can see the amount of dedication they have in the crafting of all these assets. Doey is the best character in the entire franchise. But similar to SCP Fragmented Minds, where I tore into them for the things that I think they did poorly, and then had conversations with the developers afterwards. We spoke about expectations and we spoke about things they could do to improve on it, and maybe they will do that moving forward. That's what I hope for these games. When I make these videos, I'm not making these videos because I'm angry, although I do get irate when I see potential being wasted like that. I'm making these videos in the hopes that people will listen, that they will see what the potential is there, that they will move beyond genericness and embrace creativity. Poppy Playtime Chapter 4 had the right stuff to blow everything out the water. Instead, they unnecessarily remade mechanics. They leaned into new mechanics which made no sense, like forcing you into animations to perform certain actions. They pulled away from the hands for puzzles and resolutions to boss fights. And they had some of the most generic sequences I think I've ever seen in one of these games. And they've disappointed me. I don't know if I'll play Chapter 5. I was unbelievably hyped after Chapter 1, unbelievably hyped after Chapter 2, and the end of Chapter 3 had me giddy. It had been a long time since I was that engaged with a franchise, and having them pour a bucket of ice water over my head with Chapter 4 felt horrible. I don't know if they'll ever have my patronage again, but if Chapter 5 comes out and it turns out to be pretty good, I will check it out. Regardless, I've been IcyCaress. This is why I believe Poppy Playtime Chapter 4 is a complete failure. Thank you for watching.